Adrian Wajnarowski, Yahoo Sports NBA columnist, set to join us. And let me start with the fallout from the results of this game, Adrian. Let me start with the Spurs. Barkley was on last hour. He said he could see Popovich and Duncan retiring. What do you think?
Dan, they're going to keep going. These guys don't want to break up what they have. They're in no rush to get on with the rest of their lives. They're part of something so extraordinary and something that'll never be replicated in this league. Not only do I think Greg Popovich is going to coach one more year, I've been told he'd love to go another 4 or 5 years, probably even past Tim Duncan, unless Duncan's there another 5 years. But I think you'll see this whole group back, and what would stop him from winning another one?
Yeah, but I looked at Vegas and the odds. The Miami Heat are the favorites right now in Vegas. Next year, then it's the Thunder, then it's the Spurs. What are they basing that on?
Well, this is the most extraordinary thing. You think back when Miami got together 4 years ago, you felt like at that time for the Spurs, it's over. It's over, their run's over, and Miami, this is the new age of the league. This is where it's headed, the super teams. And to think that the Spurs may have outlasted Miami's big three. We don't know yet what's going to happen in Miami, if everybody's going to come back, if they're all going to sign up again, or if this thing breaks up. It's still too soon to tell. But it's amazing to think that the Spurs may have outlasted this group.
All right, so you have Duncan and Popovich both coming back. So now we get to the Miami Heat. I was told over the weekend, maybe if somebody was leaving, it would be Bosch in a sign and trade. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, or who joins them. But I think after the first quarter last night, LeBron looked around and went, "Oh my God, I'm on an island and I don't see anybody coming to my rescue here." So, do they recruit, or do you see abandoned ship here?
It's a tough question, Dan. The biggest problem for LeBron is, where does he go? Where's the ready-made team that he wants to go to that makes sense for him, that he leaves Miami for? And I know everyone's going to say Cleveland, but Cleveland would be about just going home. It wouldn't be about a team that's ready to win titles. He's at a point in his career where he's not going to want to lose 2 years or 3 years waiting for a young group in Cleveland to figure out how to win. And they've got a bunch of young guys who've not only never been in the playoffs, they've never played an important game in their careers. And I know they'll be Kyrie Irving's great, and they'll have the number one pick and probably get Joel Embiid, and I think he's going to be really, really good. But he'll also be 19, 20 years old. And I still think they all sign back up in Miami and go, or probably the most logical thing for LeBron to do is to opt in for this year, because next summer you have more options out there. You'd have New York in the game in free agency. He can wait and see what Wade's knee looks like after another season. That's the most logical thing, but they still may all opt out and get their deals in Miami, or take a look around the league. The one thing I do know, and I've written this, Pat Riley's not going to help anybody with a sign and trade. He's not going to make it easy for especially LeBron to just leave. So if he wants to go somewhere, he's going to have to take somebody's salary cap space. And one more team to watch in this with LeBron is Houston, because they're going after Carmelo. They can create the salary cap space. Would it appeal to LeBron to go play with James Harden, Dwight Howard? I don't know that it would. But I think Houston certainly will try to get in that mix.
But, Adrian, LeBron is so sensitive to the criticism. He would get killed if he left Miami and went to a add water and stir team. I don't know if he could handle that. And you see him, he's so emotional. He was crying on the bench. I think it would get to him.
I agree. And I think that this team, I think his preference all along has been to stay here. But you said it earlier. He's looking around last night and going, what does Dwayne have left? They can That's the question. He knows he can't do it alone. You saw it in this series. He's seen it twice in the NBA Finals against the Spurs. His first one, and then again tonight, when first one in Cleveland, and again in this series. He can't do it alone, and he's got to have help. I think in the end, he trusts the fact that Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, that these guys will help him figure out a way that he will trust a track record in Miami that they've had of figuring it out. Even if the answer is not clear right now of what they do going forward, I think in the end he trusts them, and I do think he re-ups there.
He's Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo Sports, covering the NBA, their lead columnist. All right, the summer of love here. Let me start with Kevin Love, then we'll get to Melo. When he can't demand a trade, but when is this all settled in Minnesota with Love?
I think very possibly by the draft. And Minnesota, is as much as, he's embarrassed Flip Saunders. He's embarrassed. I mean, Kevin's gone out of his way in forcing himself out of there to show them up. And Flip's a proud guy. He hasn't enjoyed this. And I think there's a part of Minnesota that would like to make him go through the season there, make him come to training camp. But in the end, that's not the best thing for the organization. I think they're going to really start looking at deals here as we get closer to the draft. If they're going to get maximum value for Kevin Love, they're going to do it by getting picks in what is a very loaded draft right now. You have a lot of teams dying to get him, and I think that in the end there's a deal done here around draft time, and it could be one of any number of teams. There's a lot of teams in that sweepstakes, but I think they walk out of there with a bunch of picks and maybe a good young player and move on without him.
Do you see Philadelphia as a dark horse in this? I for some reason, with picks, and they do have, some young talent there, but it's hard to figure out what Minnesota needs and is going to value there with these teams.
Well, Dan, the thing is that Minnesota's going to have to, as much as they don't want to, they're going to have to work with Kevin Love on where he wants to go, because no team is going to give up all their assets, give up a huge haul to get Love unless they know they can re-sign him, or unless they know they have a great chance of re-signing him. Like Phoenix, to me, is the dark horse. They have lots of picks, really good young players. They've got to convince Kevin Love that he'd have a future there. Any of those teams want to know, if you're not giving me a guarantee you'll re-sign here, we want to believe it's very likely before we gut our team. And Love wants to be in a situation where he can start winning. He wouldn't start winning in in Philadelphia. Boston's a team that intrigues him. I'd written a few weeks ago that, that was a team that he was really looking at, and then all of a sudden he shows up in Boston and has his, weekend there, which really showed up the organization in Minnesota. But I think that Golden State is the team that's going to stay in there, and Golden State knows this. If we're going to get Kevin Love, we have to put Klay Thompson in the deal. And I think when you look around at all the young players that they could get in Minnesota, Klay Thompson might be the best one available to them.
Wow. All right, Melo. If he doesn't stay in New York, doesn't go to Miami, can't make that work. Houston, Chicago. What's the likelihood here of him just walking away now from the New York Knicks?
It increases with every day, Dan. He is not like the way Phil Jackson has handled this, especially publicly, calling for him to take pay cuts, and then at times saying, well, if he goes, he goes. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. But more importantly, he knows he's not going to win in New York anytime soon. I mean, he's got to wait till 2015, 2016, and that's if New York makes the right moves. Houston is ready-made for him to walk in and be really good. So is Chicago. Those are the two leaders for him. Miami's not a consideration unless they were to let one of the other guys in Miami leave and they can pay him as one of three guys. He's not going there as one of four. He's not going to take a pay cut from – it's one thing to take the pay cut in New York from $120 million to like $90, which is what Houston, Chicago could give him. Mm-hmm. But to take the pay cut down to $50 million in Miami, that's not going to happen.
Great stuff as always, Adrian. Thank you. We'll check in with you later this summer.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it.
All right, Adrian Wojnarowski.